pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please, from lovely Angela here, helping us out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Dickey? Here. Vice Mayor Magazine? Councilmember Friedel?
Present.
Councilmember Grzybowski?
Present.
Councilmember McMahon? Here. Councilmember Charnow?
Here.
Councilmember Spellich? Chairman Maroon? Vice Chairman Thompson?
Present.
Member Bell? Here. Member Butler?
Here.
And Member Dudash. Okay.
Thank you. You all know what the buttons are and all that? Okay, cool. So our first item is a discussion regarding the IGAs between the town and the sanitary district, and I'm going to be throwing everything to our leaders here, Dana and Grady.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and members of the board. I'm pleased to just have this item for discussion. Dana and I had talked at some point previously about questions that some council members and members of the public have asked about the relationship about the sanitary district and the town of Fountain Hills. And in talking with the district manager, we were saying, well, you know, there is a value there. And I said, you know, Dana, could you just kind of look at it at least from your end? Because I know I don't see a lot of fee waivers that ever come through on my end having to do with the sanitary district. And that's what the IGA covers, is that those types of costs we would waive in exchange for free services. So I'll let Dana kind of talk about, you do have this handout in front of you, but I was kind of blown out of the water with the net impact. So with that, I'll turn it over to District Manager Tromke.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? No. Yes, this was just a shorthand item that, as Town Manager Miller had mentioned, just asked if I could kind of quantify some of the items that the district and the town work together on. The first item is just frankly, a financial reporting of the cost of services that we do not charge the town of Fountain Hills. There's 12 different buildings and services, which would account to about $10,600 a year in sewer service fees that the district waives and does not bill. The largest item, of course, is reclaimed water. That's delivery of about 110 million gallons of reclaimed water a year that goes to irrigate Desert Vista Park, Golden Eagle Park, and then to fill Fountain Lake, which is used for irrigation at Fountain Park. And that would be about $125,000 at the reclaimed water rate. So when you add those two together, it's a savings of $135,000 a year, and just projecting that out, you know, over 10 years, it's about $1.3 million. But then there's quite a few other unmeasurable efforts that I think is shows the coordination and how well the two agencies work together. We have to time our reclaimed water delivery upon all the customers, and so we have a very good working relationship with park superintendent staff, and that has to do with irrigating, delivering water, overseeding, when to hold water, when to deliver. There's a lot of coordinating and repair activities at our wells that we need to do, and so there's a lot of close coordination, again, with park staff to make sure that we're not impacting town planned public events. There's the collection system staff and the public works and the street staff often coordinate on construction activities and right-of-ways, sewer service repairs, or major roadway repairs. There's some cleaning or some coordination of wash cleaning and repair activities. I know Justin coordinates and works talks often with our collection system department. And then there's often times when the district staff has equipment that may have been able to help. We've got some big Vector trucks that help clean out sewer services, that can clean out storm drains, and we have a crane and a certified crane operator, and that's been used before to lift statues. That's just a handful of them. I'm sure that there's a few others. You can coordinate on any of that.
And I just have one other thing too. So I believe the value of the $110 million, or excuse me, 110 million gallons per year is the discounted effluent cost. But if we were to basically purchase potable water or it was being treated, it'd be 3 times that. So again, think about that. It's really a third. So we were probably looking at basically $375,000 a year, and then over 10 years, that's like almost $4 million. So it's a significant savings to the town. And when I started seeing these numbers and talking with Dana, it really was very much eye-opening. And I thought it was something, we both thought it was very something to share, both with the board and also with our council.
Thank you. Councilman?
Dana, you mentioned water for the golf courses. Is that included in that $125,000?
No.
No?
No, we bill them separately.
Oh.
That's what it's if we had billed the town at the same rate we billed the golf courses. We only have one reclaimed water rate.
Thank you.
I've probably said it a million times about the sanitary district and the school district and others, that we all serve the same constituencies, obviously, and we are all funded in the same way. So it's only natural that we would be partners like this and have these agreements that mutually are beneficial so that we can serve everybody the best that we can. So we really appreciate that you're showing us this. And I just want to mention, since this is a work study session, there's no voting to be had, and whenever you want to speak up, just let me know. If I don't see you, just say something, because I may miss it. I want you to feel free and open. Is there anything else on this item that anybody would like to talk about? I just have one question. Basically, was either side looking at trying to make any changes, or are we kind of just full steam ahead here?
No, I'm not aware of any changes.
No, I think it's, this intergovernmental agreement has served both organizations very well. The only thing, and I'm not looking at this as a change, but for instance, when we had new restrooms that opened up at Fountain Park, we did separate agreements on that. So in other words, in exchange for those being built, we basically took that before council and the governing body to approve that, and we had an agreement that the town basically accepted all operating and maintenance costs for those facilities. And I think that has really been a good way of doing that in the future. We don't need to put that into the master IGA. We can deal with that as we go. So, because the master IGA really covers, for the most part, the town agreed not to charge for services to the district, and in exchange for that, the district's not going to charge the town for the use of treated effluent water. So with that, I think it's served us very well.
But going forward, there's nothing here that stops us from doing things outside of it that make sense and are maybe more finite. Mike?
No, I was just going to say, I know item number 5 is coming up, and maybe it'll, but is that going to be kind of the same philosophy at that point? You'll just come up with a new agreement for the Fountain Park stuff? Yeah.
Thank you. So our next item is about our group that has been meeting. Sharon is our representative there. And I'm not sure who's reporting on that, so I'll leave that to you again.
Sharon and Mike are the representatives.
And Sharon's reporting.
No.
I keep saying Mike, I keep having the wrong Mike, so it's
Jerry's-
you, Mike, not Mike Maroon.
Jerry's aware.
I gotcha. Okay, so, but I see someone ready to come here, so how about it? Do you have anything to say, Commissioner?
And he's ready.
Pass the microphone here.
On behalf of the Sanitary District, they did ask me to at least begin this discussion, but it is also a discussion for all of us. The topic of sodium is not new. The community is now into its 51st year, and it's been here the entire time. But before I begin any of my remarks, and keep in mind, yes, they are my remarks. I have not shared what I'm about to say with any board members, with any council members. So when I get done, those that served on the committee, if they take exception to it, they have the right to speak up, and please do. But before I begin, I do want to recognize Mayor Dickey and Sanitary District Chair Maroon for creating this committee. It's been a long time coming. It was overdue. And now we have accomplished something that we've not been able to accomplish to date. And as was just noted, from the town council, Sharon and Mike were on our committee, and from the district, it was Tammy Bell and myself, plus the town manager and our district manager. So we had a group of 6 people that looked into it. My remarks are going to include a slight look back to the past, what the committee discussed this year, and some numbers to bring context to the problem. A brief summary of 2 previous meetings of this type, joint meetings. One in February 2018, it was mentioned that some communities in the nation are banning the use of sodium chloride, and it was thought that having a dialogue with local suppliers would be a feasible first step to curtail usage. Well, that didn't happen. In October 2019, another joint council meeting, the thought surfaced that includes the district buying potassium chloride in bulk to get the cost down and make it available to residents to switch from their using of sodium chloride. And 2, it was recommended that when residents do not replace, or when it comes time for residents to replace their saltwater systems, that they do so with filtration systems that do not use sodium. So that's a little bit of the background. Our committee first met on April 30th of this year, and the first meeting was more of getting our arms around what the issues really are. And to begin with, our community starts with a very hard drinking water. And the wastewater just happens to be where the sodium shows up. The second meeting in July included review of some of the options on how to reduce sodium chloride. It included possibly establishing a rebate program to entice residents to switch to some other form of treatment. We also talked about banning the use of sodium chloride in Fountain Hills altogether. And 3, having the district buy potassium chloride in bulk quantities to reduce costs, as I mentioned earlier. But in today's society, the word mandate is not a nice word. And it was concluded that the best we could do would be to create or generate a community-wide awareness program to call attention to what happens to sodium chloride once it's used. And from that meeting in July, the town's Bo Larson and our district, Dana Trumke, created an article that you have in front of you. This article here. Thank you, Bo. And an article very similar to that was included in the town newsletter that was mailed to all residents. In our third meeting last month, we thought we would spend time reviewing the public feedback to those articles. But it was a brief meeting. The public didn't speak up. What we found were that there were 2 letters to the editor in the Times, and there was another note on Facebook, but after finding it, I discovered it was quickly removed. So the person apparently changed their mind. And to date, the district has not received any telephone inquiries. So the word is out, but not much is happening possibly. I've often been told after making presentations that I do TMI. And that probably, well, I'll admit, it comes from my wife. So I hesitated.
She's not here, it's okay.
No, but she'll listen in later. I hesitated to cite any numbers tonight whatsoever because they too often become the foundation for disputes. But being a retired engineer, I decided to do it anyway, hopefully to bring context to the community's sodium pollution dilemma. So here goes, and they're not extensive, so bear with me. About 85% of the drinking water in the United States is considered to be hard water. So Fountain Hills is not unique, and definitely not unique to the valley. Our drinking water begins with even a high amount of sodium. And for any reporting, I want it to be clear, it does vary throughout the year. But in generalized numbers, think of it as including about 100 parts per million sodium. That's what we start with. Then after everyone disposes of what I call used water, the sanitary district ends up with a wastewater that contains about 250 parts per million of sodium. The number estimates include residents and businesses add almost 1 million pounds of sodium to the Fountain Hills wastewater every year at a rate of maybe 2,600 pounds per day. And it's estimated that maybe 70% of Fountain Hills homes now use salt-based water softeners. The facts are that each 40-pound bag of sodium chloride includes 15 pounds of salt. That every drop of wastewater generated in Fountain Hills must be disposed of within the town's limits, and it's used primarily for irrigation water for 3 golf courses and for 3 town parks that we mentioned earlier. In my opinion, the bottom line is sodium in our community's wastewater is not a town hall problem, nor is it a sanitary district problem. The sanitary district didn't create the sodium in the water. The town hall didn't create it, officials. It's a community problem. And until residents think of sodium as a pollutant, the sodium content in our community's wastewater will continue on. Yes, there is technology to remove sodium from the wastewater, but as you can well imagine, it is very expensive. In 2015, the district had a study done, and it was estimated that such a facility would cost in the neighborhood of $20 million and increase its operating cost some 10%. The money to pay for such a system would have to come from residents. There are no outside sources. It's clear, in my opinion, that residents do want soft water, and that sodium chloride is their choice. It's primarily driven by cost. Hopefully in time, as a result of the sodium pollution awareness program that was initiated, residents and businesses will switch to a more environmentally friendly alternative to create the soft water that they want. And that concludes my overview, my report, but there are 3 other members of the committee plus Grady and Dana. If you take exception to it or want to add something to it, please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to add anything? Yes, Councilman?
I just had a quick question. Was there any thought given to, on your billing statements, adding some kind of a question or point of information for all of our residents to realize what the issue is with the sodium?
Yes, on the back of our quarterly bills, there is a newsletter, and if you sign up for the electronic version, you only get an email. You can get the newsletter is emailed to you as well. But on the back of the bill is a newsletter, and we've begun putting some of the same educational material. Working with Bo Larson to come up with the educational material that would go in the Fountain Hills Insider that we've put on our website, that we put on the back of our quarterly newsletter, and then also there's some still frames that are on Channel 11. So yes, we're trying to hit it as many different venues as we can.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And good job, Director Butler. I think that was a good summation, kind of where we're at, and it was kind of eye-opening, I think, to the whole committee in terms of the numbers and just the scope of the issue. You know, starting with just the water before, you know, it gets treated and then taken to the sanitary district. And you know, and it's even, you mentioned the $20 million to take care of the issue, and it's even beyond that in terms of getting rid of the brine, and that creates a whole nother set of issues that is costly and very complicated as well. So it's no simple solution, and we're all in favor of this public awareness campaign, which will continue, I'm sure, on a regular basis. It is a tough road to hoe because unless people are directly impacted by something, they don't necessarily always get behind, a feel-good kind of a thing. If it's 3 or 4 times more, or however much it is to buy the other product versus the sodium, it hits people in the pocketbook. And then if you're talking a huge bond issue or something, that generates a whole nother, discussion. But we did talk about a rebate program. I think there might be some possibility of pursuing that. We didn't really get into the nitty-gritty on working out details on how that would work in terms of who runs it, and we didn't think it was going to be that expensive, but we had some examples from City of Scottsdale and some of the things they've done, so I think there's some possibility there, but it's definitely something we have to keep working on and educating people. And people just drive by Fountain Park and like, well, why does the town do something about it? And they don't. It's just, again, it's an awareness thing, and we're trying, really. I mean, ask Kevin and all the parks people and all the sanitary district people. So it's definitely a continuing uphill battle.
Last week, I had the privilege of being with the Leadership Academy after they finished their tour through the Sanitary District. And just like our class, they were dumbfounded. They did not realize that, I call us a little island, and I don't think they really realized that we're our own little island, and the water comes in, but the water can't go out. So honestly, I think the Leadership Academy has been great for that kind of an awareness. And it's hysterical because every single one of them said to me at some point that afternoon, so they need to be really good about telling us about the water softeners. We'll start using the potassium now, but we didn't know. Again, if you check the back of your bill, you'll see that I think you guys put it on there, once every other bill, maybe more often now. Then we had the conversation that they could sign up for the electronic email as well and get it that way. But yeah, it's definitely an awareness issue, which is one of the conversations, a lot of the conversation that we had as in a group. But seriously, last week, they were dumbfounded when they realized how much of an island we are and that we need to do our own water and how much the salt impacts it. One of the things I wanted to be sure and point out is the lake itself is a 600 parts per million as opposed to the 100.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure and point that out because the lake itself is much heavier in the consistency.
Sure, the evaporation, I imagine, helps that or makes that worse. So Jerry said something about it being not a town issue, not a town hall issue, not a sanitary district issue, a community issue, but it's also a county, state, and national issue. So, again, what you said about mandates is true, but, when you look beyond that, you say, well, okay, we have these things we can try, but overall, this is a huge problem for a lot of people. So I wonder about 2 things. One is with the Tier 1 restrictions kind of coming in, Waters has a lot of attention right now. The idea of having any kind of waste or any kind of issue of water that's not being used in a way that's really that effective if it's so salty, brought that awareness, but also going with a legislative sort of argument. This is not just our problem. So you go to the legislature or you go to the federal government or the county or whatever, where this becomes not just something that they have to see on a bill, but that also makes me think of like the fireworks that all of a sudden are allowed in Arizona. And do we know why that is? It's because there's lobbyists that that pushed for that. So we need some potassium chloride lobbyists, I think, to go down the legislature and figure out a way to make them think that buying this is the best thing since sliced bread. I only say that halfway jokingly because it's true. I mean, the voices are what carry the day. So is there any effort or any discussion of bringing this to the legislature or to the county? This is not a Fountain Hills problem. This is a huge problem for the nation. So I wondered if that came up in the committee.
We did not talk about going to the legislature with any ideas, again, because it goes back to the word mandate. Very likely the legislature is not in a position today to want to be the author of mandates. So it's a problem. It's going to be with us for a while unless residents decide or can accept the fact that the sodium chloride that they put in their water softeners is, in another phrase, sodium pollution. It is causing an impact in our community, and it's primarily on the golf courses, in our town parks that use reclaimed water. It's up to them to make a switch, and until they do, as I said earlier, I think the problem will continue.
I have a comment. I think that pollution is a really strong word, and I think that that would be very, very eye-catching to people on a flyer like this, et cetera. I think not only educating our community, but educating realtors and builders and who come in and sell homes and have them have a discussion with the buyer or the seller about changing the use from sodium chloride to potassium would be really strong too. That's just the beginning, but I think having multiple campaigns going on may, help turn the tide in that regard. I'm not sure.
I think it's going to take time for this to register, and I've talked to people on a one-on-one basis because we switched to potassium chloride many years ago, and I've told them we did it, and well then I'll do it. So I think word of mouth, as we talk to our friends and neighbors, it will gradually happen, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but like all marketing efforts, if we repeat it over and over and over, maybe more people, it'll register with more people that the sodium that they're putting in, or sodium chloride they're putting in their water softeners, ends up being a pollutant in our community.
With that, Jerry, I just wanted to add that I think it's, we've seen in the history of Fountain Hills how much volunteers can do and how much residents do in our town. For instance, Dark Sky, Biophilic Cities that's coming up. There's so much that our residents have done for our community, for our quality of life. I would really like to see us open up our sodium little joint group here to the community and get our residents involved. I think that's just going to help exponentiate their hearing about it, if their neighbors are hearing about it. I know that a lot of the Leadership Academy people were very interested in it. They have been over the years as well. So if we can get a larger committee going, I know I've spoken with members of Biophilic. They're very interested in it as well and would like to participate. So I think we can expand our efforts in that way too, and just get more people involved.
I like Mike's comment about rebate. I think that's something that might kickstart something in the town, so it's something to consider. But I'm wondering, do we have any way to gauge how many people have changed over or how many people will change over from sodium to potassium?
Jerry, I don't know of any mechanism or any recording that happens in our community that would give us an answer to that. I think the answer would eventually come in the sodium content in the wastewater. But that's, as I had said earlier, going to be a gradual transition, and I don't know how you will measure it until it ends up in the wastewater again.
Yes, thank you. Well, to the mayor's point, first, Grady, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was at some point in time, you or somebody had mentioned one of our meetings that Maricopa Associated Governments was kind of tapping into this a little bit as a regional issue, or is that
There's been some talk.
wishful thinking on my
Yeah.
part, right?
No, there's been some talk, but it hasn't really gone anywhere from what I understand.
Uh-huh.
So, but I do think because there's been a lot of concerns again about things like water quality, air quality, that this is going to come up at some
Yeah.
point. Particularly since a lot of the cities around the valley that might have recharge where they can put water back in the ground and then they pull it back up when they get credits for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't dissipate all the water that you recharge and you pull it back up. So there's still going to be sodium that is in the water that they pull up and then they go and they retreat it, and it's still, they're going to still have this issue. So I do think it's going to come back and it's going to be an issue that is going to come across. And I do think it might be from the feds that actually probably mandate it.
Okay. Well, I just think, MAG would be a good place to start in terms of, they take on a lot of different issues that affect the whole region. So I think this obviously, and then to Tammy's point, I just want to say, totally agree with her. And I was going to say from a drug coalition viewpoint, I mean, the collaboration that we have with the district and trying to reduce flushing down of pills and other drugs down the toilet and down the drain, that's made a big difference in terms of, the number of pills being brought into town hall here in our prescription drug drop box. So stuff like that can work, and we just got to keep plugging along.
So I only wanted to add some of the things we did talk about, and this was, to your point, Jerry, how do we even know, like, what homes have it, is we've never, as a town, permitted a water softener. And so the only way to really have those numbers is if we had required a permit to put one in. And obviously, we're so far grown out that to add something to that effect right now wouldn't do us much good. I also wanted to say that I think we decided, and I know we don't want to really get hooked up on numbers, but I thought at one point we had discussed if we could get 50% reduction of use of salt in our salt waters, that we would have an acceptable number within our water so that we wouldn't have as much browning and see the side effects. Is that correct? Okay.
Keep in mind the sodium that ends up in the wastewater is more than just the use of sodium chloride. Normal household cleaning products contribute to it. Food products contribute to it. There are other sources that we're not going to be able to totally eliminate. But yes, reducing the use of sodium chloride is within our realm if we want to.
Thank you. I think in talking about the coalition, I mean, it's one of those things where right now you would never think of throwing your pills away like that. And in the past, I think people did. So that just shows the effectiveness of that. The other thing is, if you think of environmental organizations or federal state agencies, they set goals. So, it's not a mandate, but it becomes something where by such and such a time, maybe we can reduce by a certain percentage. And that's something that maybe MAG or some other organization, regional organization, or like I said, state, federal, it's not just our issue, could look at. Just really appreciate that a lot. I just have I know we need to move on, but there was one of those responses that said that the potassium chloride is not a solution, and they had a lot of citations of why that wasn't a good thing, and I kept thinking about how, you had pointed out how much it would be, and even with the 50%. So is there a response to that, or was that just totally information that was not correct?
Unfortunately, in today's world, information is readily available on different sources, and you can continue looking until you find the answers the way you want them to be read. So, yes, potassium chloride is not the cure-all, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Thank you very much. If you are okay, we'll move on. The next item is about the control building location. Is that Dana?
Thank you. I had hoped to have more information to present on this item at this time. If you remember, somebody mentioned, or I'm sorry, Town Manager Miller mentioned this earlier, talking about the restroom facilities that were constructed at Town Park. Those restroom facilities were constructed in order to hide some of the district's well facilities in plain sight. We have 3 wells in the park, wells number 2, 4, and number 1. And wells number 2 and 4 actually now have their control rooms are on the back side of those restroom facilities, and they're located near where our wells are there in the park. That's the reasoning for it. So that was a really great project, and that was kind of it was a town-district partnership, and the public gained something out of it, and so I think that was a very successful project. However, we also have another well, our well number 1, that needs the same thing. Its vault and its equipment is in a buried vault that's at the end of its useful life. It's in disrepair, and it's got some safety items that we would like to address, that we need to address. And so we are trying to work for another solution that, again, where the town and the district work well together and the public benefits from it. But this well is in a very more prominent location. It's right in the Great Lawn area where there's car shows and movie shows and Oktoberfest and food trucks and all that. And it's right up against the floodway, the channel. And so it's in a more prominent area. A restroom isn't needed there, and a building isn't desired right on its location. So we're trying to scour something within a reasonable distance that would provide a place to tuck in a building, mask it, hide it, do some sort of some sort of treatment to it. However, there's just a lot more challenges with this one. Grading all along the floodway and the channel and up around the splash pad is more challenging. There's a significant number of buried utilities, which make it really hard to site a building. One of the goals that the district has out of it is wanting to be able to provide our maintenance vehicles access to the building without crossing one of the major pedestrian walkways. And there's a lot of major pedestrian walkways there. So at this point, I'm working with staff, the community services director, park staff, and had meetings with town manager so that we can try and come up with a solution that's going to be workable for everyone. Had a couple false starts. I don't know that I've got support on everything. So at this point, I had wished to be able to come up with a site plan, but we're just not there yet.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Katie?
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to comment that we've been very appreciative of District Manager Tromke with trying to work with us, because clearly we're concerned with the location of well site 1, which is right in the Great Lawn area. Putting a structure there is just going to obstruct the view of the lake and the fountain from up above on Saguaro. So we really appreciate the Sanitary District and Dana being understanding of our concerns, because that's really right in the middle of a major event space for the town. We thought we had something over by the splash pad, but I understand that there's a host of other technical issues that need to be sorted out. But I'm very confident the town is, the staff and I are willing to do what we can to try to work with them so that we can find some mutually agreeable site to do this, much like we did for the other previous 2 sites. So we're hopeful we'll be able to find something.
Well, thank you, and let us know what we can do to help, or when you're ready to bring it forward. But I'm trying to remember. I guess we talked about Kiwanis Park, but was that something different? What were we talking about with that?
I think that might be the next item.
Oh, okay. Regarding Fountain Lake Improvement Project and future timing. Thanks.
Mayor, I just might like to say, as one member of the Sanitary Board, how much I appreciate the flexibility of the town working with us on the location of this control building. It is a complex issue, as you and Dana recognize, but very much appreciate the help.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So on item number 6, just wanted to clarify. So as part of the packet, I included the Black and Veatch report that was presented to the council. Most recently, it was back in May. And basically, the bottom line is that we have considerably more life on the liner. And the liner is the big driver of the entire project because the liner has a lot of different complexities and moving parts. Once you start taking the liner off, or even before that, you have to kind of start trying to figure out when you start drying up, not taking water, what are you going to do with the water? And then once it's up, how is that all going to logistically be done? So the reason why we wanted this on the agenda for the joint meeting is that we wanted to at least make the sanitary district aware of this project, which is really not right now currently in our capital improvement program because it was identified as possibly 5 to 10 years away, maybe shorter than that. So, and we really are going to rely very heavily on the district manager and her staff to help us on the coordination aspects because this is going to be very critical. And I will tell you that Black and Veatch reached out to Dana and her staff, and they were able to get a lot of good information. Black and Veatch was the engineering firm that previously was involved in the replacement of the liner, I believe, back in 2000. And so they're a top-notch firm. They will likely be also, we will likely engage them once we get rolling on an actual project to help us either with the design and or be the project manager. Because this is such a huge, complicated project, no one person on staff or 2 or 3 have this kind of background. The other thing I just want to let you know too, and this is where the question about Kiwanis Park and where that might all be part of this is that the district manager and I talked at one point about having a storage system for the water that would provide enough storage for maybe a day or 2 so that we can still irrigate the entire park without having issues once the liner's been removed. And we don't want to have any of the vegetation die because that's going to add to the cost. We're going to have a lot of concerns from the residents if that were to happen. So it's my belief that we'll likely, probably 2 years before we actually have the liner even come out, we'll likely have to have the storage system in place. And we were identifying, due to gravity and having a gravity feed, Kiwanis Park makes the most sense to probably have that located below ground and have it feed towards the park. We would still take water, likely from the sanitary district to fill the lake, or still take it. But obviously, we're going to have quite a bit of water that's going to be going into a storage system. Again, this is really on the agenda tonight just for kind of discussion purposes and letting both the sanitary district board and our council know that this is on our radar. This is something we're going to have to mutually work on. It's something that we can't do without, we're codependent on one another, and this is going to be something that we definitely need to engage both the staffs on both sides of the issue and also the sanitary district and our council. So.
Thank you.
With that, Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody may
Thank you. And Dana, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, that was good.
Thanks. Any questions or comments from anyone? No? Yes. Well, we appreciate all that work. I know that trying to remember what we talked about when we saw this in May, and I think some of the things we discussed was, even though the liner would be a while, we were open to looking at the irrigation aspect of it. So we appreciate that you brought that up. And also that with some of that rescue money, we were able to put some money towards that. And I believe there'll be more, that will be, I think it was 500,000 from the original. And then we'll probably be adding to that so that we can at least have something to kickstart it with. But did anybody have anything else that you, yes, Jerry?
So Grady, that storage, that's going to be potable water then? Or will that be sanitary water?
Yeah, I apologize because I just kind of ran through that very quickly. It would be sanitary district water from the advanced wastewater treatment plant. And so the sodium from that would be considerably less than what we pull from the lake. In fact, I think I understand it's typically 4 times as much, or two times? 250 to 600, is that? So it'd be considerably better quality. We're still going to have the issue generally, but what we would try to do is we try to irrigate with that water. It wouldn't build up a balance of water, so each night we would irrigate with the storage tank that we filled up during the daytime, and then at night we would irrigate with it. So it's not going to have the buildup of sodium over time and then have the issues with evaporation and so forth. We're also looking as part of that, and the mayor brought this up, we'd also be replacing the new, or the irrigation system, and then have multiple stations, because right now I think we only have like 2 or 3, and it takes hours and hours and hours. I think it's almost like from the time you start irrigating, it's almost like an 8-hour time period. And so we get a lot of complaints from walkers that, why are you watering when I'm trying to walk? And so those are all the issues. And then the other thing is we'll have something that will help decalcify and remove through some sort of an injection system, so that our life of the irrigation system will be much better than what we've experienced with the new one that we had in about 10 years ago.
So I would think that that's a project that we want to get started with sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say in the scheme of things, we want to have that at least completed 2 years prior to, so when the lake starts drying up, we're still taking water from the sanitary district. And then, again, we've talked about maybe with the lake going 2 routes, either a totally chemically treated lake, like most treated effluent lakes are around the valley that you see. They look, I call it the tidy bowl effect, because you want to make sure you don't have, between the aeration and all that, you want to make sure you don't have midge flies and other things that cause issues. Or we would probably want to look at, if possible, trying to, this is not the thing to be talking about during a drought, so don't quote me on this, Bob, but you may want to have some portion of non-potable water, treated water from Colorado River that is not treated, and put that in some sort of a mix between that and the sanitary district, so we can have a longer period of time before we get that salinity. And then we would still take periodic water, probably on a daily basis. What we don't use would come from the sanitary district. It just give us a longer life. So there's 2 different options: chemically treated, or you try to keep it as natural as like we've been doing over the years.
I'd like to point out that at the moment, 2 of the town parks do use the reclaimed water from the sanitary district directly. And according to what I've heard from our parks director, is he's able to deal with it. The difference is Fountain Park, because of where the water comes from. So if a holding tank was to be provided as an alternative to using Fountain Lake as an irrigation source, I'm confident that the park director will be able to deal with the water that we now produce. He's doing it in 2 other parks, and yes, it's a problem, but it's not that big of a problem.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
So if we go to, I believe you called it the tidy bowl effect, the chemically treated water in the lake, we're probably talking danger to fish and birds. What would the issue for our wildlife in the area be?
So that's probably one of the reasons why you wouldn't want to do it. Let me just explain that these other lakes around the valley do have also some waterfowl that actually get in the lakes and ponds and such. It's not uncommon. It's a lot of times the color is actually trying to reduce algae from being produced. It's not really like what you see in your toilet bowl, so I'm sorry for using that terminology. But there are safe ways that you can treat chemically the water, like we have done on occasion, have had to treat the algae. We've been able to use a hydrogen peroxide in a very diluted form, and it hasn't caused harm to animals. So whatever we do, we would definitely be consulting with engineers and people that deal with this and on the environment to make sure we're not going to harm an ecosystem that exists. So you're right on that. I also think that the staff, in talking to the staff, they really were not wanting to ever go with the tidy bowl effect I I refer to. They would prefer to have it look
I totally
natural.
knew that's not what you meant. I was not expecting the blue flesh water
Yeah.
stuff. I knew that's not what you meant. I'm pretty sure none of us expected that.
But anything we do, because it is become a habitat for both mammals and birds, and so we'd be very sensitive with what we do there.
That's actually very important to our residents. As important as having the park is the wildlife that comes in. And I'm sure we have local experts that would be willing to help too.
Before we leave this subject of sodium, my comment is directed to Bob Burns. I made a comment that the drinking water in Fountain Hills has about 100 parts per million sodium. The reclaimed water that comes out of the wastewater system has about 250. That's in the lake is 600. Bob, it all varies. By using those numbers, it's not set in concrete. They're not one number, but it's to give relativity to the change that the reclaimed or that the irrigation water goes through in Fountain Hills. So please make note that it is a variable number. I just used specific numbers to create a relativity comparison to one to the other.
Thank you. Makes sense. Any other comments or questions on this item? We'll move on then to wash maintenance. I don't know if that's Grady or Dana?
Well, I just wanted to put this on here. This has come up in the past, and so at the council level, I believe Councilmember Friedel had brought this up, and I believe maybe even Councilmember Spellich at a previous meeting in the spring prior to our monsoon season. And so we wanted to make sure that this was on there. Wanted to let the council know that both the district manager and I have addressed this through our staff. I believe very confidently that the district is doing what it can to make sure that the vegetation that is in place is not being denuded. I know that we saw something like that happen where a lot of the vegetation appeared to be removed, and looking into immediately after I learned about this, it did happen, but some of it that was removed was a lot of like bottle brush and things like that that don't have deep root systems to begin with. But there were other vegetation that was brought to our attention. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we do a lot of coordination between the district and the town, and we work, our staffs work very closely with this. And I know that a lot of these utility easements are right in the washes, which I don't really blame the district. That is just the way it's been for many, many years when we were formed as a town. I know Dana has some words that she would like to share about this as well.
Thank you. Yes, unfortunately, the original plan, town planners constructed and laid out a sewer system network, and where you can serve small areas and get them into bigger and bigger pipes, ultimately by gravity, to get to a wastewater treatment plant. And unfortunately, a lot of those ran through some washes. It was probably just a function of ease and cheap. Cheap's not the word. I apologize. Cost-effective construction at the time. And so, but just to let you know, we have 209 miles of gravity sewer, but of that, we only have 30 miles of gravity sewer that's in washes. So that's only about 15%. The rest of them are all within right-of-ways and or in other utility easements that are not necessarily a wash. So we do have to get in and have to have access to those facilities, whether they are in the middle of a right-of-way, some other utility easement, whether with or without a road, or a utility or drainage easement that is or in it out of a wash. We need to get in and clean and inspect the facilities. Most importantly, we need to be able to get in quickly if there is a problem and a infrastructure failure of some kind. We need to be able to get in quickly to repair those items. It's my understanding that we don't go and remove large trees. It's just mostly the shrubs that would end up causing all the tumbleweeds, because ultimately the sewers were constructed first, and so there aren't trees now growing right on top of where the sewers were. We generally have an easement that's about 20 feet, 10 feet on each side of the sewer pipe, so we don't take necessarily the easement of an entire width of a wash, just 10 feet on either side of the sewer pipe. Let's see if there's any other, and mostly we clear enough to be able to get our vehicles. We have a backhoe and a sewer cleaning truck, so we don't need anything larger than to be able to get our vehicles in and access and repair those facilities. Oh, and just one other item. I do know that our collection system department, again, coordinates with Justin occasionally whenever there's common wash issues. If, like the last storm that came through, there was some coordination on some item in the Ashbrook wash. We had some damage, they had some damage, so we do coordinate and work well together.
And I just wanted to, along the same lines, while the vegetation I think is important as well, the bigger issue strategically is longer term. We've been seeing, just in these unusual storm events over the last couple years, a lot of erosion. I mean, it's been a tremendous amount, to the point where we're starting to see parts of the stormwater system that is contained within the wash is starting to erode themselves. Not just dirt and sediment being flowed through, but seeing parts of areas where some homes are actually look like they're very dangerously close to where there's some issues. Maricopa County Flood Control District right now has a major study that's going on that's evaluating all of our washes and our dams. And Black and Beach, again, the firm that we are familiar with, is conducting that. And I've been working with the Public Works Director to ensure that once they are done, that we will be able to have a presentation to the council. They're identifying costs to shore up a lot of the washes, as well as what we might need to do to help shore up the dams that we have in town. So that to me is actually, I think the vegetation is kind of like, I hate to say this term, but it's like the tip of the iceberg. It's showing some of the concerns that we see, but there's some deeper underlying issues that we don't always see, that we just started seeing with this past storm system this summer. So I'm hopeful that flood control, in addition to presenting these findings that we may be able to get, even since we all pay taxes into the flood control system or district, that we may be able to get some assistance for some major capital projects to shore up some of these washes.
Could I add on? Sure. Thank you. I just want to add on to one thing. Thank you for bringing that up. I'd love to coordinate and get some information on that study. So this past monsoon season was very heavy, and we had a couple events where we had 2 inches of rain in one particular canyon. A couple years ago, when all of the damage that occurred at Golden Eagle Park, again, that was a very heavy rain, in a very small, isolated slot canyon area in town, and that created a lot of damage both for us and for the town. And so, at least my experience, and I just have a short tenure at the district so far, but my experience is that we'll have some years of very heavy monsoons, and somewhere in the town and within the district, there'll be some infrastructure that gets wiped out, and we need to act quickly to repair it. And then other seasons, we have a non-existent monsoon, and then we have fire hazards. And so heavy vegetation growth, and then fire hazards other years, and we're just kind of alternating between those two realities every summer.
Good point.
So I know I've brought this up a couple of times and sent some pictures in about wash damage. And in my particular situation, I've been in that property for 30 years. Twice before, the sanitary district came through and they put their maintenance road in. And they hydroseeded that so that low vegetation would keep that wall and that road in place. That wash now is 7 feet closer to my property line than it was a year ago. And then in another area up in North Heights where I am, your road was completely gone because there's absolutely no vegetation to mitigate the road that was plowed in there. And I'm not saying that we want it reforested, but The last couple of times, they came through and they put low-lying brush or bottle brush, whatever it is, and it maintained those wash areas so the walls didn't cave in. We had such an event up behind my house that it actually broke one of your lines. So I think in some cases, some of these neighborhoods have been put at a little bit of a risk because of the fact that these washes are migrating and they're getting bigger. And yes, a lot of that is due to the storm events. So I don't know if there's something that can be done to help mitigate that. And I don't know what the cost is involved in doing something like that. But certainly it's something maybe we could take a look at and see if there's a cheap alternative or a solution to keeping that soil where it is.
So noted, Councilmember, and we will work with the district on looking where there might be some of these opportunities together. Also, I know, Justin, when they've been able to, like, there was a house where there was a patio that literally was like, had been 30 feet previously to the last couple years, and then it had gone to the point where it was less than 3 feet, I think, was it? About less than 3 feet from the corner of their patio, and then the house is right behind that. So these are very serious concerns, and we definitely need to try to do what we can, even in the short term, to shore up things before things get worse. Again, the storm events we've had, I don't believe that they've had these events to this level that we've experienced. And so the drainage system, I'm sorry, what was it?
The intensity.
The intensity, thank you. We've had the amount of rain, but not the intensity in a short period of time. And so as a result, the water has nowhere else to go and flow. And then when it has the least amount of resistance, it starts eroding away the walls and sides of the washes. So we were even talking about at some point, when we start doing this work with flood control, we're going to likely have to use gabions or shotcrete or something like concrete, but something you'd have along the walls that are going to reinforce it and keep it from eroding away. I like gabions because it looks a lot more natural. Gabions are like a mesh that have a rusticated look with the rock so that it doesn't erode behind it. So, but these are things that we're going to be taking to the council at some point in the very near future. But I do agree that when there's opportunities for us to work together, and if there's something that Dana or her staff or my staff can make quick fixes, we should do that, because we definitely do not want to have anybody have any damage to their properties or to our assets.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. I think the whole flood control study thing, that's great for us, and hopefully that yields some good information. And I think the washes are almost kind of like the water softeners in Fountain Park and sodium and all that kind of stuff. People just tend to think they're just natural washes and don't touch them and don't do anything, and they don't realize besides the storm drainage that a lot of them do have utilities in them. So they see some activity going on, they get all excited, and it's just like, well, you do want to flush your toilet, don't you? And the other thing too is you both mentioned the fire hazards, and of course the towns for years now has been doing the mitigation efforts on the salt cedar and all the kind of stuff that's growing in the washes, and so it's just a constant battle of maintenance and keeping things up. So that's just part of the whole equation that needs to be done,
I don't know if there's any way to gauge when a storm is something that goes into the realm of an insurance or some sort of an occurrence, but that might be another way to look at one of these things, like what Jerry was talking about. If something all of a sudden is 2 feet away from his back wall or something, when does that kind of kick in, or does it? So that might be something to look at too, when something might be an unusual event.
Definitely, and we had a number of claims, and our insurer had looked at those as being acts of God. But however, I'm really concerned about our washes, even though they are naturally made and such. I think over time we're definitely going to have to do something to shore them up.
Thank you. So that's our last regular item. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add for the good of the order? Yes, sir.
Getting back to our sodium issue, so if we're going to jump in and do an awareness campaign, is there any way that we can get, I know the measurements vary, Jerry made that clear, so that we can get people excited about seeing a drop in our sodium content in that lake at some point? I don't know how often we measure that, but maybe letting the public know, hey, we're down 10 parts per million or 80 parts per million or something. I think that would be valuable, and it might show people that, that we're really monitoring that as well.
Well, I wish it was that simple, but as I pointed out to Bob Burns, these numbers, they vary monthly. They'll vary daily. And I don't know how you would get your hands around any statistics that says that sodium chloride reduction in Fountain Hills has dropped the sodium in the wastewater 10 parts per million. I just don't know how that would be possible.
It's something that we measure frequently. Is the sodium level in both in the influent and the produced effluent, the reclaimed water. But I do think that it's going to be a very slow moving thing. So it's going to be wonderful to see that trend over 2 years, but on a quarter by quarter basis, it wouldn't show any movement. So yeah, again, a trend of 10 years would give us, oh, look, we are able to reduce it, but short term.
I think the biggest obstacle that we're up against is that after people put the sodium chloride in their water softeners, they're done. The impact is soft water. They don't care what happens to it after that, and that's the reason we have suggested this sodium pollution awareness program to call attention to what happens to that sodium chloride after they dump it. Where does it go? What's the impact? And it ends up, as we said, in the parks and on the golf courses, and has an impact on the grass that we all enjoy when we enjoy our parks.
Well, thank you. Not that I knew it at the time, but we've never used a water softener, and we just have the filter in the refrigerator, so I'm not really, it's not a virtuous thing, it's just something that I haven't had a problem with in 38 years, so. Anyway, any other comments? I want to thank you so much for all of your technical expertise. This kind of most of us are probably up here, at least on our side, relying on it big time. So we really appreciate it very much. And if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.